The Nintendo Switch 2 is finally out and about, and let me tell you, after having my hands on the thing for a good minute, Nintendo really pulled out all the stops on increasing nearly every facet of the Switch design up to 11. If the Nintendo Switch was the console of potential, the Nintendo Switch 2 takes that potential and becomes Nintendo's first true foray into their idea of power. But that is for the Nintendo Switch 2 review. We're talking about Zelda now. For years, the Nintendo Switch was pretty much regarded as the Zelda machine, when compared to pretty much every other Nintendo console due to it having the ability to play most of the games, 14 to be exact when we're talking about the core series. And with the Nintendo Switch 2, all of those games, along with the Wind Waker so far, comes in tow and bumps up that number to 15. But the greatest buzz on Zelda on the Switch 2 from the launch are the improvements given over to both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Other games got some upgrades and improvements, but these two take the cake. With up to 4K and 60 frames per second output, massively faster loading times, and HDR support, it's almost as if I'm playing new games all over again. And Zelda Notes pushes my adventures even further. I can go on and on about these improvements, but the Zelda Notes that I want to get across is that how these gigantic Zelda games run on Switch 2, along with other titles such as Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, Zelda's future potential on the Nintendo Switch 2 is truly staggering. If we look back for a second on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, these games follow a very specific yet open-ended pattern, utilizing the open air approach and truly pushing the limits and the idea of what open world games can be. While Breath of the Wild, a Wii U game by the way, was truly impressive in terms of a technical philosophy, I felt like it was truly held back by the Nintendo Switch's hardware, but not in the sense that it ran completely like dog water, unlike another game, but that its real identity was limited, just like its sequel Tears of the Kingdom. What I'm saying is that while Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were technical marvels that pushed the Nintendo Switch to its limits by bringing us majestically magical games, the Nintendo Switch couldn't push the games to their limits and truly bring out the sense of possibilities with these titles, although it absolutely tried. That is now different with the Nintendo Switch 2. Now these games are the best versions they can be, truly impressing me and many the world over all over again, due to the tech inside of the Nintendo Switch 2. And this isn't the end-all be-all of what the Switch 2 is doing for Zelda. With Age of Calamity now running at a stable frame rate even in the most taxing areas, and Age of Imprisonment on the way running at 60 frames per second, Zelda's past and present is blazing. And with the past brought back and given a new light that shines brighter than ever before, we have to think about the future of The Legend of Zelda. That future being the Nintendo Switch 2. While there are rumors and speculation on the Zelda team already beginning development of the next Zelda game, which despite all of the unconfirmed reports, I'm sure they are because Nintendo ain't sitting down with this console, the avenue that they will want to explore is a complete mystery. While many Zelda fans are at odds on what kind of action-adventure game the next Zelda could explore, one thing is clear to me is that the potential is massive, not only in terms of how the game performs, but specifically in what the Zelda team can accomplish. You would think that off the bat that more power simply means and displays more land, more world to explore, and I'm sure it does, but what I'm talking about is more intricate aspects of gameplay and presentation. The Zelda team could explore new and previous glossed over aspects of gameplay. One thing to get you started is the idea of underwater exploration and combat. That was one huge area of contention when it came to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Now I'm just imagining if underwater areas were to return in the next Zelda, imagine the beauty, technicality, and wonder they can achieve by utilizing the power of the Switch 2. Another big idea on the potential of Zelda on Switch 2 is two big components of what makes Zelda a Zelda game in terms of gameplay: puzzles and combat. If you thought Nintendo exhausted what could be possibly done with Zelda before, I would think again. There is quite the darkness still left in that area. And speaking of darkness and potential, The ultimate life form, Shadow the Hedgehog, returns alongside both modern and classic Sonic in Sonic X Shadow Generations, a collection that goes beyond space and time and all that is in the Sonic series. Now enhanced for the Nintendo Switch 2, Sonic X Shadow Generations lives and learns by taking advantage of the Switch 2's new hardware, bringing a new chaos to its resolution and graphics. Relive one of the best Sonic and Shadow has to offer and one of the highlights of 2024? Or give yourself over to its chaos control for the first time ever. And what better way to experience it on the go or at home with the new power of the Nintendo Switch 2. Sonic X Shadow Generations is available on consoles and PC and now the Nintendo Switch 2. Buy the game now using the link in the description box below and relive past adventures of Sonic and dive deeper into Shadow's dark history. Big thanks to Sega for sponsoring the video. Alright, let's get back into it. With better performance and more power, it gives the idea of gameplay ideas that could not be possible in a game, or a Zelda game specifically, before. In video game development, more often than not, there are a number of gameplay ideas and concepts that sometimes doesn't make it past a certain stage or even the light of day due to them not being technically achievable or just making the game fall apart. I feel that Zelda is no stranger to that, especially after reading official companion material. But with the Nintendo Switch 2, I feel that many ideas that would benefit the Zelda games in creating or revisiting would be insane. Puzzles that utilize the processing power of the console that beckons players to think of answers or viewpoints they didn't think possible in order to move forward, all in real time, rather than accessing a menu and clicking a button. Combat skills, abilities, and contextual attacks that can be used by both the player and enemy that truly breaks the limits on how battles are done in Zelda, taking the approach from Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and Echoes of Wisdom, but isolating that philosophy on the action of the games. Imagine boss battles much bigger and grander than anything ever seen in Zelda on a frequent basis, now that developers have the power to do so. Truly, the sky can be the limit. But of course, there are limits to everything, especially when it comes to how a game can perform versus how it's presented. But I feel that Nintendo is among those that know better than most on how a game is presented and polished to absolutely make the gameplay shine. And with that being said, whatever graphical style the next Zelda game takes, I hope it's one that is both beautiful and mesmerizing, but it's not overboard to sacrifice any facet of power towards how the game performs, as the 4K up to 120 frames per second standard that Nintendo is trying to convey must be retained in a Zelda game. But I'm not too worried about that. I mean, look at Donkey Kong Bonanza. So with that in mind, personally, I would love to see Nintendo continue the sense of having the Legend of Zelda series being more stylistic more than anything else, with breathtaking landscapes and set pieces as well as awesome effects. But with all of that, perhaps take it down a darker road a bit. I'm not saying realistic or anything like that, just having the potential to give us more enthralling, epic atmospheres, and maybe throw in a bunch of creepy just to be safe. Although I've seen and lived through the evolution of Zelda, and I know Nintendo will want to use this series once again to showcase what potential can become on the Nintendo Switch 2, I feel that we won't. Rather, we can't truly know what Zelda can elevate to next, but what I do know is that whatever happens, when it happens, it will be nothing short of hype and exciting all over again. But let me know what you think and what ideas you think would be awesome for the next Zelda game, specifically on Nintendo Switch 2, built for Nintendo Switch 2. Leave your thoughts and theories in the comment section below, and be sure to like, share, and most importantly subscribe to HMK. We are in a new era, a new future. So until the next Zelda video, this has been your boy HMK, and I'll check you guys later.